Hi everyone, Bryan Hadzik here with NCSI. Today I want to tell you about Xtraction Sync. This is a new tool we have in our bag around the reporting and business intelligence associated with our Neurons for ITSM platform. So let's talk about where it is today. Why do we need the Xtraction Sync? What can it do differently? So first of all, let's talk about how it works today. Right now, you have your Neurons for ITSM product up in the cloud, or at least you potentially do. Well, what happens is there is actually a database that we actually use on the back end. But you know what? It's a cloud database. We don't want anyone touching it or making changes to it that could adversely affect the actual service itself. So what we have today is something called BIDS, and that stands for the Business Intelligence Database Server. And the concept behind it is a read-only copy of that database that gets spawned off something like every 10 minutes or so. So it's very fresh information, but it is a read-only copy of it. And what we would do is we would go and take our Xtraction server. So I've got an Xtraction server. And Xtraction is, an on-premise kind of a tool. So I have that installed on a server on my site. I'll actually go and point it at the BIDS server, and that will be able to represent the data. So when I open up the Xtraction console, I can see that. Now, that's fine, but the BIDS server actually has a cost associated with it. You have to pay for that as a service from Avanti. The way that the Xtraction Sync works is this way. We're actually going to go and create a new database, and this is going to be on-premise, but really on-premise means anywhere, Azure, AWS, actually on-premise on my servers. It doesn't really matter. It's just not inside of Avanti's ecosystem. And what we're going to do with Xtraction Sync, Sync is a little program we can install on any server really, but on the Xtraction server is a very convenient way to do it. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk to the API. There's actually an API that sits in front of Neurons for ITSM. And it is going to copy all of the contents, essentially, of that database, but through the API, it copies it into a SQL database of my own choosing. And so now what I do is I take Xtraction and I point it at that new copy of that database. So what that means is we don't need the BIDS server anymore. It's not a requirement for us to use Xtraction when you're using the Neurons for ITSM up in the cloud, and then I can do it here locally. I can also, choose which tables I want to synchronize and really customize it. One of the great parts about it is that there's no additional cost associated for it. So all I need to do is have a server to actually store that database, a Microsoft SQL database server specifically, and then I point my Xtraction to it. Let's see how it works in the console. Okay, so here we are on Xtraction server. I have the Xtraction Sync program running here. You can see it's just a local application that's installed on the Xtraction server. Really can be anywhere, but I think on the Xtraction server makes the most sense. We got several tabs up here at the top. We start with a source. Here we would put in what our source location is going to be. Again, this is going to be our Neurons for ITSM server up in the cloud. So I could say something like this, hosted Neurons for ITSM. This is just the name. I can kind of call it whatever I want. Here I would put the actual server name. So I would say in my example, go put in ncsi.trysaasit.com. Okay, next you can see we have the products, several different products out there. I'm going to choose the top one here, Neurons for ITSM, but you can see it can work for other products as well. So we're going to start with that one. There's several different ways we can authenticate against it. You can see we can do basic authentication, API authentication, or OAuth 2. API is probably the easiest. You simply just put the API key in here, log in your Neurons for ITSM instance, and either create an API key or get an existing one that you have. Or switch it over here to basic authentication, just have a username and password associated with that, and it will pull all that information down. And then we've got a test button here to test it after we've put that information in to make sure that it works, and then we have a save button down here in the bottom. I've already loaded mine up here, so you can see I've got my instance already created there. Then we go to the destination tab. Under the destination tab, this is the SQL server that it's going to go to. Save time, I'll just pick mine down here. You can see I've just created a SQL server instance on-premise. I've pointed it to a specific database, given it SQL credentials down here at the bottom. Or if you're using integrated security, you would check this box. Same kind of thing. We then go test the database. Lastly, we set up a job. The job is the actual engine that's going to bring that information down. Remember, it's only a one-way direction. We're only bringing this information down from the API up in the cloud down to our database. So you can see up here at the top, I would pick the different source and destination locations. You can see down here in the bottom, I've gone and created mine. You can choose an interval for syncing that. And remember, the information we're going to represent here is rarely needs to be real time. So it's okay to set it up on a 50 or 30-minute sync. Usually that frequency is good enough. Right there you can see the period of what we're doing it. And then when we're going to erase that data, we don't want to necessarily keep out junk data that has been erased up in the cloud. So you can see here after 7 days, we're going to go and delete it. And then over here on the side, we have an active checkbox to say that this particular job is active. So as soon as you run that, that's really all you have to do. Then go into Xtraction and point your extraction software to that database that you've just created and monitor the jobs here. You can kind of see a little bit more about that under the results tab here. When you're running it, you'll see all the different times that you've synced. Just make sure that this synchronization is happening, and you will have all of your information on premise as part of the Xtraction sync program. Okay, if you have any questions, please put them down below, but I appreciate your time. Thank you.